Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Microsoft Reactor stream. What have we got in store today? Well, we are going to be exploring DevBox. So before we get started, I would like to go through our code of conduct. So please take a moment to read this. Please be kind, be respectful, ask some great questions, and the chat is always open. So what are we doing? So this session today is called Liam and Peter Take on Microsoft DevBox. Now, Peter is a Microsoft MVP and a senior consultant at Aztec from Norway, so we're super lucky to have him here today. What are we going to be doing? Well, we're going to introduce ourselves, who we are, what we do, and where we came from. I'm going to give you a real-life scenario around where and why you might use Microsoft DevBox. Peter's going to take us through what is DevBox and why is it so cool and why is it so useful. And then we're going to do a little bit of a hands-on demo for you. So show you what, give you a real scenario, show you really how to get into it. So hello, everybody. My name is Liam Hampton. I'm a Microsoft Regional Cloud Advocate based out of the London Reactor here in the UK. I'm an Azure ambassador, so I think about everything security first. I'm a Golang and Node.js software engineer. So prior to working at Microsoft as a cloud advocate, I was actually an engineer, which I found invigorating, but I love to talk about what I make as well as make stuff. I'm an IoT enthusiast, so hello to everybody who likes to play with little microcontrollers and boards, especially TinyGo. That's where I sit, hence the Golang engineer side of it. It kind of fits together quite nicely. I love to travel, and if you want to connect with me, my Twitter handle is Liam C. Hampton. So I'm going to bring up Peter now, so he's going to introduce himself.
Hello, I'm Peter. I'm based in Norway. 37 years old, married, 3 kids. I've been working in the IT industry since 2003. I've been doing all kinds of stuff, but last few years it's been mainly Azure stuff. So yeah, I've became an MVP in May, so I'm not really an old school MVP, but one nonetheless. And I do like YouTube videos, and you can connect with me on Twitter as well if you choose to.
Thank you very much, Peter. See, fun fact, Peter was the first person we could find from the Reactor who had been playing with Microsoft DevBox after its release at Microsoft Build, which, is pretty cool. And I think he's pretty highly indexed as well. I think he's got one of the most views on YouTube for DevBox and how to get started. So we thought bring him in and we can do a little collaboration and have a little play together.
Yeah.
So as always, if you've ever been to one of my streams before, I always have learning goals. So the first learning goal today is to understand what Microsoft DevBox is. So really, what is the service? And number 2, understand how it can be applied to your team environment and find out how it can really help accelerate and boost the performance of your team and help save time, save costs, save money, and so forth. So hopefully you'll take something away from this. Before we get into it, I just want to say you can do this too, but as a big disclaimer, and a big but here, because I had some issues with the demo, as Peter can vouch for me, DevBox is still in preview. It's in public preview, which means you can do it, you can get hands-on, but just be careful of some of the bugs. And if you do find something, then please, of course, let us know and log it. So if you're a student, you can get started with a free trial account or a student account going to aka.ms/A4S. And if you're a professional or as otherwise not a student and somebody else, you can go to azure.microsoft.com/free. And this way you can sign up to a trial account and get some credits, which will last you about 30 days. But that's long enough for you to get hands-on and play with the tech, which is super exciting. So let's start with a real life scenario. Where would you use this? Why would you use it? So we're going to run through a little bit of a journey, and I want you to always think about this in the back of your head as we go through the slides and the demo. So I'm a developer, and I have recently joined Peter's team, but his team uses Golang to build their projects. And I don't know Go, or let's pretend I don't know anything about Go, but I need a safe space to fail and a safe space to play. So how can I do that? How can I find that safe space? Well, this is where we introduce Microsoft DevBox. And this is a developer environment which allows developers like yourself and I and team managers to really build scalable images and help introduce it to developers who are skilling, who are learning, give them a safe space to fail, kind of like a container, but a lot more beefier, just a throwaway environment. So with that, I want to hand this now over to Peter. So Peter, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Liam. So we've got some stuff to cover here. I want to talk about what DevBox is, why it is even a thing, when and who it's for, and how does it work, and what you need to start playing with it, what you need to set it up. So to start out with what DevBox is, for those of you who are familiar with Windows 365, it's based on the exact same service. So it's the same control plane and basically much of the same hardware underneath it. It is based to be throwaway cloud PC. So you spin one up, you do your thing, and then you throw it away, basically. And then you create a new one. And when you create them, they are usually template-based. You can use default Microsoft-provided templates, which are just basic Windows machines. But you can also have your IT department tailor templates to your needs. So, for example, if you need Visual Studio Code, Golang pre-installed, that's entirely up to your IT department, and it's not that hard to do, actually. It is easy to manage from an IT admin side, at least coming from me, who's an Azure guy. I found it quite easy to manage and do all the things I need from it. And of course, being built on Windows 365, it's accessible from everywhere as long as you have internet connection. And why it is a thing. Again, if you're familiar with Windows 365 and perhaps even Azure Virtual Desktop, you have Windows 365 on the other hand with super simple and easy to set up, but not that flexible. And on the other side, you have Azure Virtual Desktop, which is super flexible, but not quite as easy to set up. Right there in the middle, you find DevBox. It takes the flexibility from Azure Virtual Desktop and the simplicity from Windows 365. So it's really easy to use from a user's perspective. And it's also quite easy to manage from an IT admin perspective. And it's really suitable for delegation of tasks. With Azure Virtual Desktop, it was mostly the IT admins doing everything around the service. And were really much the same with the Windows 365. The IT admins were the one provisioning templates and assigning licenses and all that. But with DevBox, you have the ability to delegate. So the IT admin sets up the service and provides network connectivity and all that. And then they assign project managers or team leads the ability to provide access to DevBox pools to users or devs or whoever is the user of the service. So when and who DevBox is for? Well, devs, of course. That's why it's named DevBox. But I also see a lot of other use cases for it. For example, you have the short and midterm hired consultants, people where when you hire someone, you don't want to purchase a physical laptop, for example, and wait for it to be delivered and then provisioned and all that. You can just log onto this webpage and spin up your own DevBox, and you can get to work. And then when the hired help is done, you can just delete their DevBoxes. But it's also quite cool for smaller teams, smaller dev teams, because say, for example, all of your teammates are working on Macs, then it's easy to spin up a couple of Windows DevBoxes to do testing if you need to do testing on Windows as well. For larger organizations, it's a bit back to that it's suitable for delegation of tasks because, you can assign project managers and team leads or even entire departments their own dev centers, and that's kind of their own part of the DevBox service. So it's quite suitable for those as well. And of course, if you need some short-lived VMs, like I said, you need to test one thing. You spin it up, you do a thing, and then you delete it, and it's gone. And as in our scenario, the rapid onboarding part, where in our case, Liam is quite new. He just spins up a DevBox, and he is ready to go, and he can start doing his work. So how does DevBox work? Well, like I mentioned, the control plane is shared with Windows 365. if you're familiar with the remote desktop services from back in the day, or some still have them, but the gateway, the web access, and all of the infrastructure parts of the old school remote desktop services is within the control plane. So that's where all the magic happens, really. And then you set up dev centers, which in turn contains projects, which is where you can assign access to your project managers and dev or team leads. And within the projects, you have DevBox pools. And these DevBox pools are based upon DevBox definitions that your IT admin provides, which dictate the specs, the image to be used, and also the network connection. Because one of the neat things with DevBox is that the DevBoxes themselves, or Cloud PCs, VMs, call them what you want, they will be connected to a VNet in your Azure environment. And that's cool because that means you can connect to any services you have running in Azure. But the DevBox definitions use network connection to, basically state which VNet to be connected to, but also whether or not the DevBox should be joined into Azure AD, or if it should be hybrid joined. It is not possible to just join them to a standard Active Directory. It needs to be a hybrid, which also eliminates Azure AD domain services if you were planning on using that. So what do we need to set this up? Well, of course, a tenant, Azure subscription. I did mention the VNet, but you also need some licensing. And the licensing part here is basically the same as for Azure Virtual Desktop. You need some form of license that includes Windows. So that would be included in, for example, Microsoft 365 Business Premium, E3, E5, and so on. So as long as you have those things, you are actually ready to start playing with DevBox.
Brilliant. Thank you, Peter. I think it's amazing that you kind of touched on virtual networks there, because that's a really important part. Now, I can probably almost guarantee that someone may ask about encryption and having a secured connection, right? And I think when I was doing a bit of research about this, it's really, really good to know that the encryption, so when you're sort of connected to it, your connection is encrypted. And I think it's using port 443 and not the RDP ports 3 something. I can't remember what that one is off the top of my head. But that's a really important thing to know as well, is it is a secure connection. And I think it's brilliant that you can connect to all these different services in Azure. And obviously having access to the Azure Active Directory, it kind of makes it really, really easy to bring in or give access to team members, right? And different people in the organization, like straight off the bat. I think that's really, really good. All you have to do is sort of add in their sort of email address, username, and that's it. Like, get an email with, hey, look, you've been invited into this org. Off you go spin up a DevBox, pretty much like what we have done for the demo today. So I think what I'll do now is we'll come out of the slides, and I'm going to let you take control of this. You can share your screen, and what we'll do is we will go through what it looks like from an admin perspective, i.e. Peter's perspective here for our demo. And then I'm going to take control afterwards, and I'll show you what it's like from a user's perspective and how we can get sort of set up straight away pretty easily. So if we keep thinking about our scenario, I'm a developer. I don't know Go very well, or I'm trying to learn Go. And Peter's given me access to an image, which he's going to create, and I'm going to be able to play with it in DevBox. So if you share your screen now, Peter.
Yeah, it should be shared now.
So we'll add that one to the stream. That's the right one. Fantastic. So I'll let you take this one away.
Yeah. Thank you. And well, as you can see, this is the Azure portal, and I have the DevBox service here. And within the DevBox service, you are able to create different dev centers, which, if you consider it from a large org kind of thing, you would have different dev centers for different departments, perhaps. In this scenario, I have created the Reactor Dev Center here. And within this Dev Center, I have a bunch of stuff that I need to consider. But let's start with DevBox configuration. So I mentioned networking, and this is where I would do that. So I have a connection here called the reactor connection. This connection, if we go into networking here, we can see that this only specifies a VNet and a subnet to where the dev boxes should be connected. But if I take a look at the properties, you can also see that the domain join type is Azure AD join. So in my scenario, we will be joining the dev box straight to Azure AD, but we could also do it in a hybrid scenario if we so wanted. When I add the network connection to my dev center, the service also does a few checks. If you see that on the right side here, the status is passed. That means that from this network connection, there is possible to provision dev boxes and join them to the Azure AD domain, for example. Or in a hybrid scenario, it is possible to join computers to the Active Directory from this network connection. So that's one of the checks that the DevBox services does for you. I also have here the Azure Compute Galleries. And we mentioned templates because that's a huge part of the DevBox service. And the neat thing is that this is a pretty standard Azure Compute Gallery. This is not something that is specific to the DevBox service. So if I already had a bunch of templates in an Azure Compute Gallery, I could reuse those templates for my DevBox setup. The thing that we do when we add a Compute Gallery to DevBox is basically just clicking Add and selecting a gallery from a list. And once I add it, the Windows 365 service principal is given the read access to this gallery. And that is something that the Windows 365 service needs in order to actually read the templates that is configured in the gallery itself. So you can use it to provision dev boxes. And down here, we also have the DevBox definitions, which I mentioned is what dictates the specifications of the dev boxes. So for example, here I have the Reactor VS Code and Go template, which I created for this scenario. And you can see that the image status, no errors found, which is good. That means that the DevBox service has done a few checks, and it's actually possible to deploy dev boxes from this template. And you can also see that it's set up with 4 vCPUs, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and 512 gigabytes of storage. You can also specify which version of the templates you want to use, because in Azure Compute Galleries, you are able to have different kind of versions for your different templates. So, for example, if I were to add or update the VS Code within that template, I could have a version of that template being 1.0.1. And in the DevBox definition, I could then specify which version I want to be deploying, or in my case, always be using the latest version. So that's the basic things we need in order to start creating dev boxes or projects at least. So if you take a look at projects, like I mentioned, this is where you would set up a project for either an actual development project, or if you have a department that's going to be using this for hired consultants or something like that. So if I take a look at this Reactor project here, in this project, you have the standard access control, which is pretty standard for all Azure services. But if I take a look at role assignments here, you can see that apart from the standard contributor access, we also have DevCenter DevBox user, and we have DevCenter project admin. And the project admin is the one that assigns access to this project. So I, as an admin, could provide access to other users in my organization as well. And you can see that I have already added Liam as a DevBox user, and that means that he can go to the DevBox portal and deploy dev boxes. But before he can deploy dev boxes, we need to set up a DevBox pool. So if we take a look here, you can see that we have 2 different DevBox pools in this project. And we have one that is based on the Reactor Definition 1 DevBox definition, which we took a look at earlier. And we have the Reactor Project 1 VS Code and Go pool, which again is the DevBox definition and image that we will be using now. If I click on these pools, I don't know if I have a DevBox in this pool. No. But if we go into the different DevBoxes, you would see, or if you go into the different DevBox pools, you can see the different DevBoxes that have been provisioned for that DevBox pool. And you as a project admin can go in and stop DevBoxes that are running to cut down on costs. For example, if the user of the DevBox is going away on a holiday and forgets to turn it off, you can do it for him, and that way cut down on costs. And yeah, let me see. What else is there? One more thing around identity here that we need to set up. In Azure, there is a thing called user-signed managed identities. And you can see that I have created a Reactor identity here. That is also a identity that needs access to the Azure Compute Gallery in order to, well, make the connection between the gallery and the DevBox service itself. So apart from the Windows 365 Surface principle that I mentioned earlier, you also need this identity to have access to the Azure Compute Gallery. And yeah, I don't know if that's enough behind the scenes, Liam.
Yeah, I think that kind of covers it, right? I like that because often in streams like this, we always do the golden path. We always do, what you need, but we don't really show you like the backing and the admin side of it. So it's really good to see that we've got both the sort of administration side and the user side. And this is really important because it's such an intricate bit of kit that there's quite a few steps behind it. I mean, it tripped me up a few times. The documentation is super good on this though. So we've done a really good job at outlining everything you need to do, all the prerequisites, the steps you need to go through. So at the end of this, we will stick in the chat a few links for you to get started. But this is a really, really important thing to understand, especially from within Azure and having to know so many different services and kind of how they operate. So network connections was something new to me. I'd never used that before until we started playing with DevBox. I think it is seemingly for DevBox. I think it's brought in for that one because I haven't used it beforehand. So it's a really, really good bit of kit, and it's exciting that we get to play with it today. So just in the background,
since you mentioned documentation, Liam, I just want to point out once the public preview was since it was launched, from the moment I sat down and started reading documentation, I spent less than 2 hours before I had my first DevBox up and running. So it's not that difficult to get started, actually. And as you said, the documentation is pretty good on this.
Yeah, it's pretty solid step by step. I mean, when I was doing it, I was exactly the same. I was following it step by step, didn't miss a beat. But hey, of course, if you do find a problem, if you find a typo, if you find a step missing or something, isn't quite right, you're coming into an error, as the public or as a user, you can submit tickets for it to be fixed. So we always take feedback. So bring it in, give it a go. Just noticed in the chat. So hi, Ishan. So from San Francisco. Yeah, let us know where you're from. Let us know where you're watching from. Pop it in the chat and please do ask some questions. It's a really, really good bit of kit. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen because in the background, I have actually started up or kicked off a DevBox environment myself. So if I share my screen now, I'm just going to bring it up and let's move stream out of the way. So sorry if I'm not looking at the camera. I've got a big TV to my left and I've got my laptop right in front of me. So I'm going to be looking down for this part. So let me just bring it up as well. So let's add my screen to the stream. So hopefully you can all see that. So this is the view from DevBox, which you may have seen in the slides, which I showed you. But if you want to add a new DevBox, then all you do is you click on new DevBox in the top left. So you have to sign into the portal. So it's devbox.microsoft.com. And I have signed in with the account that Peter gave me, which is liam@petertechdemo, yada, yada, yada. I've logged in. I've signed up to this. I've created a new dev box. I clicked on this one. I put in a name. So hello world to everybody. And you select from the dev box pool. So from here, you can click on see all pools, and you can see that we've got reactor project pool 1, and we've got reactor project, the VS Code Go pool. So I've already started up this dev box itself for the Go environment. So I'm not going to start another one, but all I'd do is I'd select it from this list, and then I'd select create. It's not what I'm going to do because I've already got one running. And it takes about 30 to 90 minutes. And of course, we don't have time in a stream for that. So let's go into one that I started and kicked off earlier. Now, there's a couple ways you can get into this. So you can go in and configure RDP. So you can download a client, whether it's for your Mac, whether it's for Windows, and of course, you've got iOS as well and Android. So if you fancy doing some, I don't know why you would, but if you fancy jumping into a virtual box or a remote box from the train or on the go or something, then you apparently can. And you just set that one up. Otherwise, you have this really cool way of accessing it through the browser, which I think is pretty cool. Everything's being made for the browser now, which is brilliant. Browsers are becoming top notch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open in the browser. And all this is doing is it's kicking off a new browser tab for me. And it is loading up the DevBox environment. And there we go. So open that in the browser. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select connect. Well, you can sort of give it access here. So I took off printer. I don't know why you'd want that. You may have a printer on your network. I just took it off. I don't want it connecting to anything other than my microphone and clipboard. You can have some advanced setting as well. There's more options that you can turn off and on, but I'm not going to worry about that today. And just click connect. Now, hopefully this shouldn't take too long. And I'm going to sign in with my password. Hopefully that's the correct password. Wonderful. So you can see how quick this is going already. And I don't want to jinx it, but that looks pretty quick to me. I'm going to collapse my toolbar so you can see a little bit more of the screen. And I've got my share thing hiding my toolbar. So I can sort of click around. This is a Windows box. This really is a Windows box in the browser, and it's pretty quick. I mean, you can sort of determine what you want to put on it yourself. And like Peter said, you create your own images for this, or you can select a standard pool of images. So if you just want a virtual box or like a Windows box, like a plain Windows box for your team to play with, then you can have that. Otherwise, you can have some zooped up fancy stuff in it of you can have all the sort of projects that your team are working on. You can have everything installed. But all we've done for this one is Peter's installed Golang for me, and he has installed Visual Studio Code for me, so VS Code. So it's also created a desktop folder for me, which is called Liam's Go project. So in this folder, you can see if I try and open it, there we go. It's empty. But if I go into VS Code, I can now open that up and I can start creating my project. So let's spin up VS Code and let's start writing some Go code, I guess. So what I'm going to do is, look at that, it's already opened in the correct directory. So let's just get rid of the getting started box there. And as we can see in the terminal, so if I do Go version, you can see that it's already installed. It's installed Go version 1.19.1. So that is the latest long-term support or the latest stable support of Go to my knowledge today. You wouldn't get that on a ordinary Windows box. It's not as painful to install and set up Go as it used to be, but it certainly still takes time. And there's still some intricate bits that you might not want to have to do as a new developer. And we'll talk about that. We'll circle back to that one because that's actually a really important point that I just jogged my memory. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file in here, and I'm going to call it main.go, because if you're a Go developer, then you would have your main file. Now, of course, I'm not expecting you to all know Go. This is a very, very basic example, but we'll go from there. So next I want to do a Go mod init, which is just going to initialize the directory as a Go directory. So Go mod init, and I'm going to say it is Liam's Go project. So hopefully that will, there you go. It's giving me a mod file. So I can now start pulling in some imports, and it wants me to do a Go mod tidy. It's not going to do anything. I don't actually have anything or any modules in there yet, but hey, why not? It just makes the terminal happy. So in my main file, I can write, if I can type package main, and let's do an import of FMT. So the format file, got some on the keyboard. FMT, and let's create a main function now. And all this is going to do is I'm just going to print out hello world or hello dev box. So from this point, we'll just do fmt dot print line. If I can type print line, and let's put hello dev box users. And all I've got to do is save that file. And hopefully, if we do a go run main, hopefully, look at that. Okay, this is a really, really basic program, and I'm not expecting this to wow absolutely anybody. But what the wow part is seemingly someone who wants to learn Go and wants to fail fast and continually build their skills up. This is a really good way for administrators to give it to new members of the team, whether that be onboarding. It doesn't even need to be coding. It could be a pre-installed application to help with online training. Something which is really throwawayable or disposable is probably a better word. This is the perfect way to do it. And it solves so many problems. But I guess the flip side of it is if I am trying to learn and all I did was just do click, 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 and suddenly I've got this really verbose, really sort of extravagant environment right in front of me, I'm kind of missing out on learning the fundamentals. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, but you can always start with the fundamentals and work on up. But what this has done is it has installed VS Code, it's installed Go. I can write my Go code. You can install plugins. So I've installed the Go plugin here, which is sort of already part of this. So I can sort of format my Go code, imports, underline, that kind of thing. So as you can see, it's a really, really fun way to get started with any language. And like I said, it doesn't even need to be Go. It could just be learning anything. So that's the fundamentals of DevBox. So you can kind of see how we went from problem and an idea to Peter building something for me and literally handing it over to me and me being able to get on top of that and start coding straight away. It's really cool. And I really like this. So that's like a whistle-stop tour of DevBox. And what we're going to do now, do you have any questions, Peter? Do you have any questions in the chat, actually? Let's address something in the chat.
Could I just show you one thing then? Now that you have your DevBox up and running, I could actually show it from the admin side of it as well.
Yeah, let's go for it. Let's see what it looks like from your side.
Yeah, so if...
bring up your screen.
Yeah, right. So back where we were last time around, in my Reactor Dev Center, in my project, the Reactor Project 1, and DevBox pools, and in the Reactor Project 1, you see now I have Liam's Go project. That's actually Liam's DevBox, and from here I can see that it's running. But if I wanted to, I could either stop it or even delete it. So that's from both the IT admin side and also the project manager. But seeing as these are based on Windows 365, another benefit for the IT admin is actually that we have all of these boxes enrolled into Endpoint Manager. So if I go into Endpoint Manager and to Devices and Windows, I can actually see Liam's DevBox here as well. So with this, I can do even more management of the DevBoxes, like pushing out applications or updates to the DevBoxes even after they have been created. So even though they are disposable and easily recreated, if you for some reason need to have it for a prolonged period of time, this is where I, as an admin, could go in and push new updates and stuff like that. So yeah, that's just what I wanted to highlight now that we have your DevBox running.
That's brilliant to see, because VMs have been notorious. I mean, I know at least when I've been playing with virtual machines in sort of companies, and making sure they're up to date, making sure those laborious tasks are done as a developer was always quite hard. So it's really good to know that we can do this, or it can be done and managed from one place in Azure, especially sort of from an administrator's perspective. And I guess from that point, you can kind of lock down certain applications and give you certain access rights within a dev box itself. So you're not just going and downloading BitTorrents and going absolutely wild just because you're in this sandbox environment. So yeah, it gives you like a really good sense of security, especially sort of as a team admin.
Yeah, and speaking of security, you mentioned the connection to the dev boxes, and there's, like you said, you don't have to open the RDP port from the internet, because there's the reverse proxy thing in that control plane. So when you as a user connect to the DevBox service or Windows 365, that connection is from you to the control plane, and the control plane is the one that talks to the dev boxes themselves. So that's the added benefit of doing this as dev boxes, as opposed to just spinning up a regular VM in Azure or anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you could have this for like across an entire team of developers as well, right? So it wouldn't just be for one dev; it would be for an entire team of devs, and that's kind of where the pools come in, I think, from this perspective, because you'd have a pool of machines dedicated to maybe like the development team. I mean, if you're doing it in a waterfall process, or I don't know, you want to do agile, but say you were in waterfall, you have your development team, you'd have your testing team. You'd have the release team to make sure everything works together. And that actually reminds me, another really good way to use this, ignoring the whole onboarding scenario. I'm a Go developer or a Go engineer. And for anybody that knows anything about Go, it's cross-compile compatible. So you can build your binaries for a Mac OS machine, for a Windows machine, for Solaris, for a whole host of operating systems if you really want to. And being able to develop on a Mac machine, specifically on a Mac M1 machine, I've noticed this quite a bit over the past few months of using this, is it can be a little bit annoying when you have when you've built a binary and it's not running at an optimal speed, and you need to sort of help boost that. You do your benchmarking in Mac OS, but then if you can build one for Windows, the benchmarking might be completely different. And if you're building from a CLI perspective, which is something I've done in the past, when you're interacting with the operating system or the underlying sort of host machine itself, if you're running terminal commands, then it's completely different from Bash to PowerShell and so forth. So it's a really good way for you to test out different environments with your code and your binaries or your release assets from that perspective, which is a really, really cool thing to bear in mind, because like I said, you can have really beefy machines at this point. And if you have a really beefy machine, you can do your benchmarking on something which is super duper good or something which is pretty average. And from that, from a team perspective, I mean, you'd probably want to do this in containers or have, this working in containers in, CI/CD release pipeline. But say you were just a hardcore development project and you're working on something like Halo, and you don't have this big, beefy computer on your desk, but you really need to be developing, the game, and you're going to be working on it. How do you test it? How do you benchmark it? How do you really understand how it works in the wild? Because, you can't just rely on a pipeline to be doing that for you. So it's a really good way to do that and sort of test your assets as well.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen again. And let me just make sure it's the right stream, that one. And I'm going to show you what it's like to delete the dev box. And it's pretty simple. I'm pretty, it's pretty good here. So say I'm finished, bashing around and writing my Go code and doing whatever I'm trying to learn. All I do is I just sort of close the browser and I just leave and, ignore this one and face back with the dev box screen itself. And we just click delete, and that's it. And that dev box will delete itself. And like I said, it's a throwaway. And all I can do, if I want to make it again, I just spin it back up.
Yep.
If I want to make some amendments to the image, then Peter, go ahead and make some amendments to the image, and I can spin up a whole new environment with Java if you really want me to.
Yeah.
Hey.
As an IT admin, what I really appreciate, once you delete that object or your dev box, then it's cleaned up in Endpoint Manager, for example. You don't have any residual objects laying around, because that is often the case when you spin up temporary and disposable VMs. But once you hit delete there, it gets all cleaned up.
Perfect. What more could you want from a team sort of admin from that perspective? I think the last thing I'd want to do is have to go around cleaning up my team's virtual machines and whatnot. I think that's a bit of a laborious task. But it's nice to have it all encapsulated in one place. And that just kind of goes with sort of working with kind of the underworks, under the hood being 365, right? And having this whole managed service all around you with lots of golden sort of nuggets that you can tap into lots of different parts of Azure and Microsoft. So I see from the chat, I will jump into the presentation again because we've got a few more things to go through. And by that, I mean upcoming events and whatnot. So we've got San Francisco, we've got Canada. Hey, Bruno. Yep, nice to see you. Nice to see you, Owen. Hello from the Netherlands. God, we got like a global stream going on. I love it. So we've got a few questions. So, okay, is DevBox to compete with code spaces? No, is I think my straight up answer for that one, because Codespaces is more of a sort of a smaller version of coding in the browser, coding sort of in a container, whereas this is for a fully managed team where an administrator will have sort of total control over a team. You wouldn't get your onboarding people to really just spin something from Codespaces and expect them to go forward. There's a lot more behind this because it is a full Windows box that you're playing with. It's not just one repository or one project in a container. Is probably the answer to that. I don't think I can really add any more to that one. That kind of covers it.
Yep.
What else do we have? We've got, can you connect to a dev box in VS Code? Good question.
Well, if you mean from one dev box to another, then yeah, because, well, at least that as long as they're connected to the same VNet, as we spoke about in the network connection part, as long as everything is connected to the same VNet, you can connect to each other. Like, for example, one thing we didn't show is I actually set up a static website with a private endpoint in Azure that's connected to the same VNet. And that static website is only accessible from within the DevBox environment. It's not accessible from public internet. And yeah, it's kind of the same thing from one DevBox to another. You can connect if everything else is allowing that connection, like firewall rules and all that.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's probably the bit that we probably didn't show, isn't it? Is the whole VNet creation. So when you create an Azure Virtual Network, you go through adding subnets and whether you have your Bastion host and things like that to connect into your virtual network. And as long as it's in your virtual network, you can talk to it, given it its direct routes, given it's in the right subnet. The fundamentals of that is just understanding networking and how that's working. But yeah, like you said, as long as it's in your virtual network, it can all talk to one another. It's like having an addition or like a throwaway addition in a virtual network. So instead of sort of spinning up a virtual machine itself, you've got a virtual machine in a wider box of other goodies which you can sort of tap into. It's kind of like an abstracted layer underneath that rather than just being like a direct into a virtual machine, which is quite nice. We have one more question. Hi all, I appreciate this is not directly linked to the topic, but does anyone know if Microsoft partners can get access to ESI? Probably not that I know of. I'm not quite sure what you're asking there. If you do want to get in touch, just contact me via my Twitter handle. My DMs are always open. So yeah, if you want to answer that one, we can talk probably outside this stream. This is purely DevBox. We want DevBox to be going forward with this one. So thank you. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen again. And God, I like doing this. We've got lots of chopping and changing here. Let me just make sure that that's up. And I'm going to share my PowerPoint. And I think I've got a helper on the back end to help share my screen. So if I go into full screen, Rav, please, can you share my screen? Can you just let me know whether it's up? Because I kind of got my screens are covered.
Yeah, it's up.
Awesome. So, and that is the wrong slide. So let me go to the right slide. Where are we? We're down here. Okay, so what is coming up next? So if you're not already bored of my voice, I've got another stream tonight at 6 p.m. BST, so that's UK time, the serverless revolution. So we're taking a step away from virtual machines, and we're going to look at where we are up to now with development processes and where we're in DevOps lifecycle and whatnot. So yes, come on to that. That is going to be a conference talk or conference pre-talk. So my first run through of something which I'm going to be doing later on. So it's exciting for me. It's exciting. Hopefully you will all find it interesting as well. And I've got a bit of a live demo, bit of a coding demo to go along with that one too. And on the 28th of September, I have another stream. So you want to migrate your project to serverless. So I'm fully on the bandwagon of functions and serverless services in Azure. And hopefully, Rav, if you could please pop those links into the chat, that would be ace. And we just want to say a massive thank you for you all watching this stream. And thank you for your questions. They're great questions. And a huge thank you to Peter for one, putting together the image for me to play with, and two, for having such a wonderful outlook of DevBox and being one of the first people to play with it and having him on the Reactor stream. So thank you ever so much for that, Peter. And if you want to connect with either of us, then our social handles are on the screen for you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Liam.
No, most welcome. Honestly, it was our pleasure. This was something which we really wanted to have fun with, and we're so glad that we found you. If you want to get in touch with the Reactor, or if you want to know where more of our events are coming from, and you want to watch even more of this greatness that we got going on from Microsoft, please do scan our QR code, join our meetup group, and yep, you'll see all the events posted on there. So I think with that, if we don't have any more questions in the chat, I think maybe that's the end of the stream. Maybe if I can stop sharing. Unless we have anything else. Do you have anything else? So Bruno says, DevBox seems to be a cool one. Thanks for something. You're most welcome, Bruno. Thank you for joining. Thanks for coming along to the stream. It's fantastic to see the support from our team. So that, I think we can end it there.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you very much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Cheers.